What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Creative Journal podcast. This is entry number 21, first episode of 2024. And if we aren't starting off with a good one, then I don't know what qualifies as a good guest. Today's guest is Mr. Matt Vojacek. He's the owner of Made by Things Creative Studio in Columbus, Ohio. Primarily a motion design studio, but he's one of the creative leaders for sure in this area. He founded Making Midwest, which is a creative conference coming up sometime in 2024, and he is very well-spoken on social media, and he has a great LinkedIn page, which I recommend you follow as well. All will be linked below. So this is a great conversation with Matt. This is entry number 21 of the show. Expect to learn how to write your own story as a creative, some habits for success in a creative career, how to approach new ideas, Matt's lack of internal dialogue, Matt's approach that he calls the house money mindset, how to make 12-year-old you proud, and much more. This was such a great conversation with Matt. I've listened to this probably 3 or 4 times now, taken very copious notes, and we'll also talk about Matt's journaling process as well. And this was just so much knowledge, so much value packed into such a short amount of time with Matt. And I really look up to this guy, and that'll definitely come across as I did a little bit of fanboying. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode of the show, and we're just going to get straight into it. That's how we do it here. Without further ado, please welcome first episode of 2024, entry 21 of the Creative Journal, Mr. Matt Vojacek.
I never loved school. I actually hated the idea of going to school.
Yeah.
And as soon as, maybe this sounds weird, but I knew that I could do good at it if I really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, there's nothing here for me to be good at.
Right.
And it wasn't until at the end of my junior year where I started these conversations about college, and it's like, I don't know what I would even do. And my mom was like, well, you like art. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy, because nobody makes money doing art. Like,
Right.
that's silly. But started having a couple conversations with a couple of recruiters from different schools, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, like maybe there's something here still.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a decision at the start of my senior year. 2 things. I was like, one, yes, I'm going to go to art school. I don't know which one just yet. And 2 was, I'm going to try as hard as I can in school, just to kind of prove it to myself that if I tried, I could actually do good.
Mm-hmm.
And all throughout my senior year, I got a 4.0, which never in the history of me going to school was I able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was important for me, because I was like, okay, maybe I am good at this stuff. Like, it's true. I just wasn't really trying before. I just didn't care enough.
Yeah, that was probably big, because then it like proves the concept to you, right? Like,
Right.
if you're that good at something that you don't actually enjoy, like school, then how far could you go when you apply it to something like, creativity and design, and then
Right.
how far that's taken you so far. But continue.
Right. I don't know. After that, went to Art Institute of Pittsburgh, which no longer exists today, but I went there. And I went for media arts and animation was the program. So primarily 3D animation was what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And as soon as I get into school, I realized that some of these people are really good, and like I'm not. Like, there's certain things that I could do really well, but I felt like everyone else around me was just way better.
Yeah.
So that was kind of another moment for me where I was like, all right, I gotta make up some ground here somehow. I'm gonna start by sitting next to the best people in class. Didn't care if I liked them or not. I'm always going to sit next to the people that I thought were the best, because I want to learn every little thing that I possibly could. And that's what I did. And those people ended up becoming my best friends throughout college. And it was a really fun time, because the best kind of competition, pushing each other to constantly make stuff that was just better than anyone else. And So after a while of that, so I went to college in 2005, graduated in 2008, and I like to think that I graduated near the top of my class. There's no real rankings, but I felt pretty good about it. I felt really good about, okay, maybe I can get a job in this. Maybe I can do this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
But 2008, 2009 was a pretty big economic disaster
Mm-hmm.
where no one's hiring and no one's even thinking about hiring people that can animate or design or anything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really tough time going through, I don't know, a lot of doubt. Uh, a lot of doubt of like, did I even make the right decision going to college?
Mm-hmm.
So applying for hundreds of different jobs, getting very few interviews. The ones that I did get, I didn't really want those jobs anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
it got to a point where I was getting pretty desperate 5, 6 months in where I'm applying for jobs at Best Buy, Micro Center. Didn't even get interviews at those places.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, damn, like I just wasted a ton of money on this stuff. And at pretty close to 6 months exactly, like right when I had to start paying back those school loans, this big realization,
Mm-hmm.
um, ended up getting an interview for for a job as a multimedia artist at the United States Department of Energy.
Mm-hmm.
Super weird opportunity, but they contacted my school. My school knew that I was looking for a job at that moment, so they referred me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they after the interview, they gave me the job. And I guess it was, there was this pretty. It's not something that I usually talk about, but like that was a pretty big emotional day,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, all right, like I did it, right. It's like sort of like a come from behind victory kind of thing,
Yeah,
where it's
like
like
you're
I
just
was
yeah, you're looking
like
for just kind of like any place, any kind of foothold,
right,
and then you felt like that was it. Mm-hmm.
right, and it was good to know that it wasn't all for nothing. And I tell that story a lot because it's had a huge impact on a lot of things. All the stories that I've sort of told so far of, coming from a blue collar family, having those moments of adversity, I suppose, it it does something. It makes you different forever
Mm-hmm.
whenever those things happen. And that's one of those things where some people, I've seen it, so I can say this, but like some people will go straight negative with this and they will just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Like this is I wasted this money, whatever. Like a lot of people I think would have given up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really happy. And like there's definitely days where I wanted to give up during that little fight,
Yeah.
but I'm really obviously glad that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my first job, and I remember my first couple of days where I'm like, all right, the first thing I need to do here is wow everybody. I
Mm-hmm.
need to make it so that they know that they chose the right person.
Mm-hmm.
And the first couple of days, I was asked to make a 3D like video card kind of thing. I can't remember. It was like a circuit board type thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do that, and this thing's gonna look amazing. And no one was asking to like see any updates. But it's like 3 days later, I made this whole animation with it, and like it looked pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I showed it to my boss, he like kind of pulls me aside. He's like, hey, like you really shouldn't be working on stuff at home. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's no way you did this in 3 days, like normal hours. I'm like, I
Yeah,
did.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Right. And it was just those little moments right there that just kind of helped continue to build that confidence. Where I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, like I'm doing it. Like it's
Yeah.
working. So I
Mm-hmm.
found my place in there. I worked there for a couple of years. And at that point, like I wanted more. Like I wanted more responsibility. I wanted more difficult challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And the dream from day one was always, let's move to California, right? Let's do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't honestly think that that was a possibility, but some of the friends that I had back in college, the ones that I would sit next to, one of them in particular had moved out to Los Angeles, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna go out there and see them. Just take my first vacation where I would ever get on a plane at the age of, I think I was 23 maybe at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So incredibly scared because I'm getting on a plane for the first time. But I go out there, and I was with my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, and we're just exploring all this place, and it's just so new, and just, I don't know, I think we both fell in love like right away.
Mm-hmm.
Not that even while we were there, like wasn't even considering like moving there, but it kind of turned into an interview of sorts whenever it's kind of touring the studio that my friend was working at.
Mm-hmm.
We sat down at a conference table, and it just turned into like, it wasn't an interview, but they started asking questions that was like
Mm-hmm.
very interview like.
Yeah.
Like, hey, would you come here and work? I'm like, yep, yes, I would.
Yeah, this place is
uh,
awesome.
right. It's like it was a crazy surprise, but I'm like, I have to like think on my feet real fast
Yeah.
because this could be an opportunity. I didn't
That's
know
probably why
yet.
you killed it, is because I mean, you didn't
Didn't
have the
think about
impression
it.
it was an interview. Yeah, that's usually how the best things go, when you make your best impressions when you're not feeling under pressure to do so. So, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it definitely played a role in it. So they basically gave me the promise of 2 weeks worth of work. And I just used all my vacation time from my other job. So I was like, well, I have to quit for a promise of 2 weeks.
wow.
And that was tough because again, like there is a sense of loyalty to a place that gave me a chance, right?
Mm,
That it gives anybody their first chance. There's, I don't know, there's a relationship there.
mhm.
So it was tough coming back from vacation and yeah, getting the 2 weeks and basically having to say sorry, like I have to leave now. Um,
Wow.
Still one of my favorite places I've ever worked. The people there were just incredible people that I
Mhm.
just even still to this day kind of keep in touch with.
Yeah. Where was
So
this at? Was this in Columbus? Was it
that first job that I had was in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh? Okay.
So I
Right.
after the Art Institute of Pittsburgh
Uh-huh.
moved back from Pittsburgh to Cleveland. 6 months
Okay.
later, got a job back in Pittsburgh. So I was
Okay.
hopping around a little bit there.
Yeah. I knew you started in this area, then you went to Pittsburgh, and then I
uh,
knew LA was in there. I'll just kind of backtrack and see
yep.
where we're at the time, but continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So while I was there in Los Angeles, yeah, that 2 weeks go by, and they call me up to the conference room. And it wasn't until like I was walking up to the conference room where I realized I'm like, oh man, this was only 2 weeks of a promise, and this is the end of the 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I was like, I don't know, really nervous walking up the steps to
Yeah.
this conference room because I'm like, if they tell me I'm done here, then I don't know what to do next. Like I didn't burn bridges, but like it wouldn't be an
Yeah.
easy bridge to fix. And luckily they asked me to stay. So I was like, wow, that's great news.
Yeah.
So at that point, then I officially, well, came back, got all of my stuff, got my wife, and we moved out to Los Angeles.
Hmm.
So while we were there, I worked on, I don't know, a lot of like those dream projects that I always hope to work on,
Hmm.
working on things for TV shows, working on things for music videos, um, movies, just a whole bunch of variety of stuff that I was like super excited to work on.
Mhm.
And over time, I was there for about 3 years. Um, this whole time, I was trying to learn as much as I could. I knew that I wanted to run my own business one day,
Yeah.
but I was like, this is that opportunity that I get to just ask questions and to learn as much as I can.
Mhm.
To the point where, like, the owner of the company that I was working at in Los Angeles, he was like, "You ask a lot of questions. Like,
Mhm.
why?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Because I want more." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, I just looked around. I'm like, "This, I want this. I want this for myself. Like all this that you've done, like you've
Mhm.
done well, and I want to do well."
Mhm.
And so for me, it was always about like, okay, keep learning, learn as much as you possibly can.
Mhm.
And in that 3 years, like I love the experience that I had there. But after 3 years, my wife and I had our first son, and we decided shortly after. When I say shortly after, I mean a month after he was born. We're like, all right, it's time. It's time to go.
Mhm.
And we started looking at a bunch of cities and ended up in Columbus. There's a creative community here. Told my mom I would never be moving back to Ohio, but whenever I
Mhm.
saw what was going on in Columbus, I was like, all right, we'll give
Yeah.
it a shot.
Mhm.
So now I've been here for 9 years, and in that time, basically started off as a freelancer here. Within a couple years, kind of started the business officially.
Mhm.
Then in 2019, hired first employee, and kind of fast forward through today. Sorry, I'm really skipping ahead here, but
Yeah, no, we were going like under the spot. I went whoa, very fast.
I guess fast forward to today, we're a team of 10 full time, and we have I think
Mhm.
18 contractors on a project right now,
Wow.
long term project. So there's pretty much 30 of us at the moment,
Wow.
and
Mhm.
yeah, that about updates us
Yeah,
on things. So
that's probably fitting because I think just from listening to all your content and stuff, I was pretty filled in on the more recent stuff. But
mhm.
yeah, that's super inspiring. What was man? I don't even know how to follow that. But I'm just trying to like put myself because I'm 22 right now. I live in
Okay,
Marysville. I just got my first apartment, so I'm kind of like grown up now, I guess. But don't
yeah,
feel like it. But I I'm seeing a lot of a lot of kind of similarities to like trying to learn everything every day. And I'm in my first design position. It's a place called Rudis in Marysville. I do apparel design for they're the biggest supplier of wrestling and athletic apparel in the country,
nice.
and it's a very fast paced environment. They have a lot of seasonal hires that they're trying to staff up because the last 3 months of the year they do I think it's 5x the first 9 months just because of the season and everything.
Yeah,
But yeah, I what is when you're working in that agency when you're getting your first position when you're known as the guy that's asking all these questions and trying to be the curious one. What does that day to day look like? Do you consciously kind of go up to like a new person every day and say, I want to get a feel for what this person does, what their role is, and how that kind of factors into the team, or what does that kind of day to day look like?
yeah. One of my favorite things early on was once every hour or two, I would just get up and walk around with a glass of water. And
Mhm.
just people probably hated this, but I would just look and see what they're doing. I would just watch them. I don't need to talk. I just stand there and just sort of see what buttons they're pressing, see what they're
Mhm.
doing.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know. Maybe that was awkward and weird.
No, that's one way to do it. I try to kind of be the same way. I try every day to meet one new person. And
hmm
it takes discipline, dude, because it's hard. Because it's so easy, especially when you're doing a job where you're not I'm not sure how your job was, but, when you're not working in a big part of a team, a lot of it's you're doing your own projects. You have to get your assignments done for the day.
Right.
You could just sit there all day and grind, and if you it's taken a lot of conscious effort for me to say, "Okay, get up, go talk to this person, ask this question," and I always feel so much better after I do, even if it's
Yep.
an awkward conversation. I feel like I'm bugging them. I'm just like, I mean, I'm
Yep.
I'm doing my best here. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to have that beginner's mindset, and everything you do, I think, goes a long way for sure. But
I think that's it. That says it best. You have to have that beginner's mindset where I was like, I knew that there was a lot of things that I didn't know, but I didn't know what they were. So it's the whole like you don't know what you don't know thing. So like how are you going to learn? So I guess for me it was always just paying attention to what was going on.
mhm,
So the job that I had in Los Angeles, it was a small company at the time. Now they're like there was like 12 of us maybe total, and
okay,
now they're at like 200 something people.
wow,
But so of those people, I was like just always paying attention. Like what is everybody's role? Like see if I can figure it out. Like I would talk to people about it too. Like we'd have lunch together and
mhm,
have those conversations, but to me, the business was always just make stuff. Okay, just make stuff.
mhm,
But it's like, wait, if we're just making stuff, why are all these other people here that aren't making stuff necessarily? What are they doing?
mhm,
So like then I started to learn about business development, started to learn about producing, and just started to learn a lot about just client management and just relationships in general, I guess. Like
yeah,
what like it takes a lot more to be able to build a creative business than just being good at the thing. Like that's the
Very
barrier of entry there.
right.
But everything else, like there's so much to it.
Mhm.
And so for me, I guess it was like, I don't know. It seems simple now, but it's the whole curse of knowledge thing where it's like it's tough for me to like remember what it was like at that point.
Right.
But
Yeah.
like for me now, I'm like, oh, it's easy. It's just every company has like 5 departments, right? Like
Mhm.
you have production, you have marketing, you have sales, you have human resources, and you have accounting.
Mhm.
And for me, I was like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just didn't think of a creative business just like any other business that exists in this world. But really, it's like it's the same. You just how you go about it is a little bit
Right.
different.
Mhm.
So for me, that was one of the big things that I was, I guess, learning at this time. Was like, okay, if I do want to have a business, then I need to know these things. So then I would start asking people specifically, like, all right, well, like, how would the contracts work for this stuff? Like, are you getting money up front? Like,
Mhm.
the cool thing was that everybody answered every question that I've ever had. No
Yeah.
one's ever been like, "Oh, no, don't you ask that. Don't you worry about that."
Yeah. Yeah. They're not.
Um,
People are so even. People are just so willing to help, no matter what it is, and it's like you always kind of play out the worst
mhm.
vision of everyone in your mind. Like, what's the worst possible way this interaction could go, and you kind of play that out in your mind. I do that a lot too, but that's why it's so powerful to just get up and have the uncomfortable conversation, no matter how bad they go, because even the worst it could possibly go in your mind is so much better than it will actually end up being. So,
Right. A lot of this kind of takes me back to, um, again, the biggest dream that I had in this world was I want to make money creatively.
hmm
I just don't want to have to work in a factory, right? Like I didn't want that more than anything in this world.
hmm
It's like that's just not me. It's not who I am. And as soon as I got that first job, I kind of felt like I was playing with house money, where I'm like, okay, I did it. Like now anything left, like anything else that I do in this life is kind of a bonus. And it's weird because I still do see things like that quite often where I'm like, okay, like so what if I fail at this thing? Whatever. Like I still made a dream come true, and that's pretty damn cool.
hmm
So I think for me, there's always been this like I don't really care what anyone thinks if I look stupid or if I fail at anything.
hmm I think it's a really powerful mindset because it's like when you're starting a business, I mean, I know you know this more than I do, but it's so much of it is reinvestment. If you have that mindset that you've already made it and that you can, you're only just reinvesting into yourself. Like it's hard to do. Like yeah, I have a lot of respect for you on that front. But that really spoke to me right there when you said that you were just trying to make money creatively, and you've done so much more than that. Like now, just think about it. Now you are someone that allows other people to do that. You have employees and it's just yeah, the progression of that story is really inspiring to me. So continue.
Well, that's
Sorry, I didn't
awesome,
mean to
man.
cut you off.
That's no, I appreciate that. That's something that it's nice to hear that honestly that reminder.
Mhm.
Because having employees can be stressful.
Oh yeah.
There's good things to it. There's bad things to it.
hmm
Um, you like to think that you are always doing good in the world, and sometimes you make mistakes. And that's just another one of those things where I mean that's how I run the company in general is like not by everyone saying like, okay, Matt knows exactly what to do next. Yeah, I always say it's just like a ship captain hundreds of years ago, right? Like
hmm
if you it doesn't always matter if you're wrong. But what does matter is if you are confident in the direction that you're going and if you have a good reason to do it.
mm
So my thing has always been like, all right, now as um, a leader of creative people, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do next?
hmm
Why are we going to do this? Why this? Why that?
Yeah.
And it's tough to remember that as well. That there's so many decisions on a day to day basis that sort of need to happen.
Yeah.
But it just kind of became one of those things where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna trust what I think. Like I consider things quite a bit. I write constantly.
hmm
Um, but I don't often think about, oh no, what if this is the right or wrong thing to do? I'm
Mhm.
always like, well, here we go. We're gonna do it this. So let's go. We're moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and that's something that I feel like again kind of stemmed from this idea of like, well, like you already made it, so
Mhm.
what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. That's a really powerful mindset to have. I know I said that already, but that's um when you I've heard you talk about your mindset. I've heard you say before that you don't really have an internal dialogue. And I I was like, man, that must be nice. But I've heard you talk about your journals and stuff too.
uh,
What are some of the things what does that journal look like, and how does that kind of prepare you for? Because I can't imagine, dude. I can't imagine being managing 18 people remotely like that, and then having a team and a family, and so I respect that a lot. But what is and I mean, obviously the shows it's called Creative's Journal. It's kind of a play on. It's basically just an excuse for me to interview people that are creative in the industry, and it's kind of a play on like the Wall Street Journal with the financial side of it and business.
right.
Um, a lot of
Yeah.
freelancers and stuff. But what does that not internal dialogue look like for you?
A lot of that is, well, I guess first of all, yes, I don't have any internal dialogue. So I still think,
Hmm.
but usually when I'm thinking, it's more visual, a lot more visual, probably.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's tough to compare it with something I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, honestly, I didn't realize that was even a thing until long after I started journaling because I realized I couldn't push forward in certain thoughts.
Hmm.
A lot of it was just you have a feeling, you have an uneasy feeling, you feel good about something. Like you'd have these feelings, but trying to link the feeling with the thought that you have. Um, I mean, it's essentially, I think, what do they call it? Cognitive therapy, I
Distance.
think
Yeah.
is something along those lines. And it's like I was doing that without realizing it.
Yeah.
And so I think I started in 2016, 2017.
Mm.
Um, it's actually really fun to go back to like kind of journals that I've had since 2012 and
Yeah.
see how it's sort of evolved into what it is. Where like initially it was just my to-do list,
Yeah.
but it wasn't every day. It was just when I felt overwhelmed,
Mhm.
which I'm like, why did I not do that every day?
Yeah.
Like it's funny to look back now, but it got to a point where I was like, wow, like I if I can recognize that I'm overwhelmed with all the things that are going on, after I write about it, all of a sudden I feel organized.
Mhm.
So another key of that is, I mean, like you were saying, like, yeah, you're doing all these things. The key is to not think about all those things at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah.
To try to compartmentalize each of these things and give each thing its own sort of thought energy.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's how I think about it on a day-to-day basis. That's how I think about it every single week. Every Saturday morning. My wife knows my routine, my kids know my routine. As soon as I wake up Saturday, like, okay, let's go through all five departments of the business. Sorry, you can hear him screaming
No,
back
you're
here. I don't know
fine.
what he's.
You're fine.
Yeah, this is how it works. Anyway, so
I love it, man. Love it.
so for me, yeah. So every Saturday morning, it's about going through all of these things, getting everything out business wise that's on my mind. Because usually during the week, I don't have a whole lot of time to like process as much.
Mhm.
Usually, it's just like things are going to happen,
Yeah.
and I kind of need to like every so often during the week, I'm like, oh, a lot of things are happening. I need to sort of like pause, slow things down. And my version of slowing things down is to start writing about things.
Mhm.
So like even today, um, I have I have a multicolored pen. I won't go into this too much because I know I talk about this a lot.
Mhm.
But red is my to-do list. Blue is the things that have happened that day because I, for whatever reason, just want to remember
Mhm.
every day. It's kind
Okay.
of my weird memory trick. Um, Black is what I'm thinking about that day,
Mhm.
and green is what I'm feeling that day.
Okay.
So every single day for the last 7 years now, maybe more. That's been my routine. And some days might have 75 words, maybe half of a little page. Some days it's like 4 pages. I don't have a plan. It's all based on feel. If I'm feeling not good about something, then I need to write about it until I feel better about it.
Yeah.
And most of what I write about is about business. Occasionally more personal stuff, but not nearly as much. It's probably like 90-10 to just writing about business related stuff or ideas that I have.
Yeah.
If I'm like, I guess another example is like, all right, we're running into like a slow season. It's like, what do I got to do marketing wise? Like, I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, I can tell that marketing needs more of my attention right now because leads are slowing up. We need to do something. So marketing and business development, like what can I do in those 2 areas? And then I'll just take some time to figure out like, okay, here's what I'm doing right now. What could I be doing? Like if I had all the time in the world, what would I do differently? So that's where the podcast came from, because it was like, okay, you know what? This is a fun way of marketing that I enjoy. So let's do that. But then there's some days where I'm like, oh man, the team is getting burnt out from like doing some projects here. So I need to kind of like focus on this a little bit more and see like, do we need to change something? Do we need to ask a client for a little bit more time on something? I don't know. Or it might be, hey, there's not enough money running coming in right now. Like, what's going on? So I'll have more focus on accounting and trying to figure out like, all right, here are the contracts that are out. And I have my wife helping with a lot of that stuff, but still for me, it's just, you kind of bounce around. So on a daily basis, I'm not thinking about, I don't say to myself, okay, I have 3 kids. I have a wife. I have 30 employees. I have a business, and also I need to make payroll on Monday. Like, I don't think about all those things at any given point. And I know that that's like stupid advice because nobody can just not think about things. But that's where writing just helps a lot, is to just organize those thoughts and figure out what is the most pressing thing, what is the priority, because you can't think about it all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like when I hear you say that, I kind of think of like a good version, not like the way it sounds, but like kind of like instead of like death by 1,000 needles, and the fact that you're not thinking about everything at once. And I guess I know that may be a bad like example, but it's you don't get overwhelmed about things because you think about them throughout the day, and when you write them down, you feel in control of them because you're making them real. And I think that helps a lot for sure. And it's a good way. I can tell you're someone that has a lot of spontaneity, and you have a really strong bias towards action, I would say. And that's a really good habit to have. And I think when you first get a thought, you first get an idea, your natural bias is some kind of action. And that's why you have that journal, because it makes it real. It's right in front of you.
Yeah. It's something that I have to be careful of. Like, it is a good thing. Like, I'm glad that I am that way. But sometimes some ideas don't need action. Like, sometimes ideas just aren't that great. So I do a talk actually about my journaling process. I've only done it once so far, so I'm not going to spoil it too much just yet.
Okay.
But it's kind of that idea of like my process for ideas. And it's like the idea of minimum viable products. So it's like, what's the minimum thing that I need to do to make this idea exist? And if it means hacking something together just to see this thing exist in the world, then I'm going to start there and then make a determination at that point. Like, does this need to be escalated? Does this idea need to be something more? So like one example is Making Midwest, a conference that I started when I came to Columbus. Well, it wasn't a conference when I started. It was just a meetup, and there was like 6 of us that showed up at a bar. And I was like, okay, that was my minimum viable product. And I was like, all right, let's try to scale that up a little bit. Like, how do we get more people at this thing? Honestly, I think a lot of it is taking the time to be obsessed with one thing at a time. And for me, it was like, okay, like with any of the ideas, it's going to take obsession to do that. And it's like a obsession energy.
Yeah.
A power bar at the top of my
Yeah.
UI. And so that's where having to be careful about those things. Anyway, so with Making Midwest, it was taking it to the next level. All right, like let's get 30 people to show up. Cool. How do we get 60? What do we need to change? What do we need to do? And it got to a point where it got too full and we had to turn it. Well, I didn't have to, but it was just easier to turn it into an annual conference rather than a quarterly meetup. So we did that starting in 2017. We did 18 and 19. COVID made that stop. So we're bringing it back right now, and we're hoping to, I think end of May of 2024 is
Okay.
when that's coming back. But I mean, that's just a perfect example of like an idea that started really small and just seemed to kind of grow over time.
Yeah. How do you seem, I know you have like, you said having the determination to see things through. You seem like you have a lot of different ideas. How do you kind of balance that with like shiny object syndrome, meaning like you kind of spread in 1,000 different directions, not getting anything done?
Right.
It seems like you have a lot of ideas, but you have the perseverance and the gusto to see them through. Like, I mean, you're still doing all the things that a lot of the things that you still started doing, and you're scaling them up very well. It looked like from the outside. So, how do you kind of balance the 0 to 1 to
Yeah.
seeing things all the way through?
I guess what I'll say is, well, first of all, let me say this. I'm not perfect at any of this stuff, right? I'm simply just saying like some of the stuff that I've sort of learned here, but
Yeah.
it's stuff that I always feel like I'm still learning about. Like I've made a ton of mistakes, and I think that's honestly where a lot of it comes from is
Yeah.
just you learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, my goal here is to make you look as good as possible. So,
well, I appreciate it. Um, I don't know. It's um, chasing the shiny object, I think, is easy. I don't just think of an idea and then immediately start a website for it that day or anything like that.
mm,
There is a process of like, okay, if I have this idea, let me write it down in my book here. Is it something that still sticks with me like a week or two later? Do I still think that this might be something that's worth exploring?
mm,
I keep writing about it. Weeks might go by. I'll keep writing about it. As long as I'm thinking about it, I'm going to keep writing about it, trying to figure out as many things as I can. Another example is like a year and a half ago, I saw a property for sale and I was driving past. I'm like, that needs to be a bookstore. Like I'm not a bookstore owner, but I'm like, that needs to be a bookstore.
mhm,
And so what I would do, I came home and I'm like, all right, let's see here. There's a lot of different ways to think about this. If it was to be a bookstore, what would make this more unique than anything else?
mhm,
Um, I start thinking about that stuff. I start thinking about like, oh, there could be like little events or something. Like I'll think it through every aspect of it and I'll write it all out, almost
mhm.
like a business plan. I didn't. I mean, I it might take a couple hours here and there to write, but it's not like probably didn't take me away from other things that much because it's just
Right.
over time. And yeah, I basically got to a point where I'm like, this is a cool idea. I'm gonna keep it. Maybe one day I'll use it, but not today. Like
Mhm,
there's other ideas that I would rather kind of put my time and attention into.
mhm. It's
So it's
yeah,
like,
it's kind of having a capture device and then
mhm,
making sure that the flame's still there even when you can't pick it up at the moment, I guess.
right. And I guess that's it. There's certain ideas that you can just forget about completely, and some that you just can't.
Mhm. What are some of the
And
ones that you haven't been able to forget about?
now let's see. Well, Making Midwest is definitely one of them where it's like I really shouldn't be doing anything like that. I should be just focusing on the one business, but I can't stop. Um, there's Creative Little Monsters, a children's book that I wrote that
Mhm.
we are hoping to launch within the next
Soon, yeah.
few weeks, maybe within the next month.
Mhm.
Um, but that was one of those things where it's like, all right, I wrote it, and I wrote it like 2 years ago, and I was like, all right, guys, it's not going anywhere. We're gonna have to do this now. Like we had some
Yeah.
time uh, between client projects where I'm like, like let's try it. Let's just see how far we can get on doing something like this. If it takes us 4 years to do, it takes us 4 years, whatever.
Mhm.
But when I start to see it, when the team starts to see like, ooh, this is something, there's an energy there that's, I don't know, that can make things come to life a lot faster. And that's what happened with that, is that we ran a Kickstarter for it because we were like, hey, let's see. And once we started seeing the response of everyone else, we're like, all right, this is something that we should do. Like, let's go. And even now, like, so the book is currently printing, and we'll get it here in the next month, start shipping them out. Even still, it's like, wait a minute, I don't think this is done. Like, there's something else here, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's like this. There's more to this whole like create a little monsters concept than just a book.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
is that a hint or like?
That's a threat.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. I see what you did
Yeah.
there. But yeah, I really admire your ability to not fear trying new things. I think that's something I need. If I'm being vulnerable, that's something that really holds me back too. Is you kind of build up this identity around who you are, and we as people, I feel like, kind of have a natural aversion to anything that we don't associate with our identity. And I think being very fluid and very open and receptive to trying new things is a superpower, honestly, and I commend you for that a lot. But I
Appreciate
had
it.
a couple specific questions I wanted to ask you. Maybe
Okay.
the ones I showed you. I saw the biggest thing you use Notion, which as soon as I heard you say that, I was like, man, you're among friends here. I started using Notion like middle school, high school, and I haven't
Nice.
stopped using it ever since. So, um, Notion is great. What all do you use that for? And do you have any like specific templates you would recommend,
Oh man.
or how does it kind of play a role in your life and your business?
Yeah. So I would say um, it is very much the second brain of the entire business.
Mm,
So that's probably the primary way that I use Notion is as a wiki, basically, of like, oh, you know what? This department, they need to understand this. Like, just figuring out process and um, just general knowledge that I'm learning about at the time. So it's like an evolving book that I'm writing on how to create a motion design business.
yeah. Hmm.
And every so often I'm like, oh, I'm missing a page from this book and I need to put it in there.
Hmm.
And it's exciting whenever you realize that you're like, oh, there's the page I was missing. Like, I didn't think I was missing a page, but turns out I am.
Hmm.
So I think that's how it all started for me. But at this point, it's our complete project management system
Hmm.
at the company. So we have a calendar. Everyone's on the calendar. Their days off are on there. Their projects are on there. Everyone knows what they're going to be working on. They can look at their calendar every day.
Hmm.
And outside of that, I also have like my own personal side of it that has like cooking recipes.
Hmm.
I have like I don't talk about this ever, but like I have my like favorite movies of all time that I have a constant ranking of.
Okay, dude, you are a nerd, man. That's
No,
awesome.
100%. So like somebody's like, "Oh man, that movie's in like my top 10." I'm like, "Well, actually, it's my number 7."
Just pull it up. Like, let me check. Do you use the mobile app too?
I mean, I use it, yeah, every so often I'll use it mobile, but
Mm. It's
um,
dude,
yeah,
they nailed the interface on that. Like,
yeah.
if I could be an investor, not that I could provide a whole lot of financial value, but I would. I'm on Team Notion for sure. There's so many different things you can do as far as.
Yep.
I mean, I have my college notes in here still. I have social media calendar. I have habit
Yep.
tracking, um, different databases, weeds, podcast stuff. Um,
Yep.
uh, just you can really nerd out on it for sure.
Yeah, I like to follow the Notion subreddit on Reddit,
Okay, I haven't
and
heard of that.
yeah, there's I'm a big fan of Reddit. I don't know, just honest advice from strangers, basically.
Mm,
It's nice. But there's always people on there like trying to do certain things, and I'm like, oh, like I could use that in this way if I was to do something like this.
mm-hmm.
Or
Yep,
just people just sharing their general like dashboards and stuff like that.
I know.
It's fun.
It's really visual too. I think that's as creative people, it's very visually appealing to kind of make a database like that and then kind of see it
Right.
build up over time. It was like I haven't done a ton of 3D motion animation, like certainly not to the standard you guys do, but I can imagine it kind of plays on the same kind of dopamine circuits as that delayed gratification of the slow building, and then you see
Mhm.
the end product, and then it's something you still feed into over time too. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
let me ask you a question here. So you said you're 22.
mhm.
Um, right now, it's crazy for me to say this, but I'm 36.
Damn, you're old.
I
Oh.
know.
No, I'm just, I'm just
I
kidding.
didn't think that was the case, but no, I guess I think it's really great for you to start something like this, to be vulnerable about kind of what you know and what you don't know, and
Mhm,
have some honest conversations like this. I think
mhm,
you're ahead of the game, honestly. But let me ask you this.
mhm.
Let's say 10 years from now, you're 32 at this point. How do you describe what a successful creative career is at that point? And do you think you'll be successful at it?
I That's a good question. I would like to think that, and I'm not by any means a cocky person. I have very large amounts of insecurity around pretty much everything I do. But I would like to think that no matter, and I've kind of always had this in my head, that no matter what I kind of, well, no matter what I do, I'm, I'm going to find a way to be successful. Um, and that was back, when I tried to apply that mindset to school, to creativity, and it scaled kind of the same way that you did. Like, you start doing this one thing and it kind of leads to another thing, and you want to learn how to do it. And the biggest superpower you can have is just having a belief in yourself that you're just going to have the grit to overcome it. And like, you start at creativity, and then you find a way, oh, how do I make a way to do this to a living? A step after that is to learn marketing, business, contracts, invoicing, all that stuff, and then use that to get more work. How do you use it to serve people in the best way you can? um, if I was going to tell myself now what a successful career looked like, I think it would be to just trying everything and then trying to find that one thing that you can't stop thinking about. And for me, so far, that's the goal of, having these conversations, is to try and
Yeah,
figure out what inspires other people and what they can't stop thinking about. Because I think I haven't had, I don't know if it's the self-awareness. I don't know if anyone can feel this in the moment, but you really haven't found that thing. And I think the more I'm kind of starting to go on this journey of, the creative industry and making a career out of design and service, is that I don't know if you ever really find it. I think it's just kind of the pursuit of looking for that thing and then learning as much as you can on the way. And that,
right.
um I don't know how accurate that is, but I just trying to, I told my parents from the start, was just like kind of following the trail of creativity, kind of like a cat follows the thread of a yarn ball, it's kind of like, kind of aimlessly, but you're just kind of picking up sensory feedback on the way. And it's just kind of having the faith that's all going to work out, I think, is big too.
That's
But
awesome, man. I Yeah, I guess one of the reasons I ask you that, because it's like it's interesting for me to think back on like what would 22-year-old me say about anything.
what do you say?
Um, um, I I can also, I know I'm not trying to be cocky here, but he would be proud for sure.
Hmm.
He'd be really happy with how everything is sort of going at the moment. Um, I I don't know. I guess that's really all I can think about at this moment. Honestly, for me, it goes back to even my 12-year-old self. Like I talk about this all the time, but like I'm always thinking about 12-year-old me.
Hmm.
And like, what, that kid, he wanted to make stuff. He wanted to make stuff all day long. And I mean, no, I don't necessarily like make stuff necessarily all day long anymore, but I'm still happy. I'm happy with the time that I had um, with, being a 3D artist and now kind of being more of a creative director or film director. Um, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, you kind of have these periods and it's like, it's okay for them to end. And I think 22-year-old me probably would have said like, you sell out. Like, you stop doing the thing. Like,
Mhm.
we said that you weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
So but I think there was also, again, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. And I guess one of my other beliefs is that, like, you're under no obligation to be the person you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I say all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
also said by Alan Watts most famously.
Yeah. I think I heard you quote that. If I'm remembering you say correctly, it was you have no obligation to the person you were 5 minutes ago.
I
I
was
think it's
hoping you
so.
wouldn't remember that because I
Yeah.
accidentally
Oh,
said
you a
yesterday.
trap up here. Yeah. You thought I
That's
wouldn't
awesome.
know.
Yep, it
I
is. It's 5 minutes.
got you.
Um,
Mm. See, I researched my guess. Don't you
I
try.
see
Oh.
that. But like, to me, that's like, that was one of the most important things that I ever like heard somebody else say, and it's like, oh,
Mhm.
and it's like, man, you know what? If I want to say never mind, I want to be something else tomorrow. Who cares? Like, yeah, people will say things. They'll be like, what the hell? That's weird. I mean, whenever I left Los Angeles, people were like, wait, so you're leaving the heart of it all to go to Columbus, Ohio? I'm
Mhm.
like, yep, I am. And they're like, why would you ever do that? Like, you're like, you're making it right now. I'm like, I'm gonna be fine,
Mhm.
probably. Um, it honestly became a little chip on my shoulder whenever stuff like that happens, which I
Yeah.
do better in those cases. But anyway, so I was saying, like, you go through these periods of time, right?
Mhm.
And the period of time for me to keep doing like actual animation work on a day-to-day basis kind of came to an end uh, a year or two ago. But that's the thing that probably allowed me to actually build a business rather than be super stressed all the time.
Mhm.
Um, so it just became one of those things where it's like, all right, where am I more valuable? What do I enjoy? If I decide tomorrow that I no longer like being a creative director, I'll stop doing it.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I probably
Man,
won't just do it
hope
immediately,
hope
but
none of your employees are listening. Damn.
they know. I have this joke about how one day we're going to come up with a lawn mowing business. We're going to call it Made by Lawns or something.
Hey, there you go. Yeah.
So I'm always like, all right, guys, we're going to do the lawn mowing thing today.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's not like I
Yep.
would actually do that
Mhm.
because
Right. Yeah.
I enjoy this stuff. I can't foresee a day where I don't enjoy this, but
Mhm.
there's certain aspects of it where I'm like, don't enjoy that anymore. Like, let's figure out a different way around that.
Mhm.
And so, like, one of the things more recently is like, all right, like, we do a lot of client work, and there's some people that we work with in the past that's just like, it's hard, it's stressful.
Mhm.
It's like, man, wouldn't it be nice if we just made things for ourselves?
Yeah. That's the
And
goal, right? Yeah.
right, so it's like, all right, let's start making that pivot. So that was kind of a big thing for me this year with the team, was like, hey, we need to get more into entertainment. And I think that everyone was just kind of like nodding, like, yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But as of, like, I don't know, a couple days ago, I had a call with a potential client that's like, this is an entertainment project that's going to be several months for making it. It's like, oh man, like, we're doing it, like, we're starting to make that transition.
Mhm.
And I just told the team actually this morning, and they were like, oh my god,
Mhm.
like, it's,
Yeah, he's not crazy. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, yes, see, I'm not crazy. But like, that's, I don't know, it's one of those things again where there's just phases. And sometimes I don't know. I think if anything just plateaus and just stays at a constant for a long time, everyone's going to get bored.
Mhm.
But it's hard to see those things at 22, and I don't think you're supposed to, and I don't think you should think about those things.
Mhm.
I think, if you were to ask for advice, that if the one thing I'm really proud of, that at the age of 22, between 22 and 30, is that I was working my ass off for sure. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say ass on this, but
Say whatever you want, man. Okay, I've
great.
said worse.
um, is that I worked really hard, and I didn't see it as work, because I enjoyed this stuff. So I would, work my full-time job, immediately come home, keep working some more on my own stuff or other client, like my own client projects, like between the hours of 6 and 10.
Mhm.
Sometimes wake up early the next day and kind of get some of that done. So, like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I always found the time to do this stuff because I've always really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And luckily, I mean, all that stuff sort of translated into experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I'm glad that I did all those things, and I don't work as much as I used to, but now I feel like I take longer strides than I was ever able to before. But it's
Yeah.
just getting that knowledge was the hard part. So
Yeah, you're in a place where you have a lot more leverage for sure. And I think what you said about it doesn't feel like work to you. Um, I I mean that's why you are where you are, because it's hard to beat someone that's not enjoying what they're doing. If you're just enjoying what you're
right,
doing, it's the kind of seems like there wasn't really any alternative as far as what you were going to do when you got home. Like that's what
right,
I've always kind of felt like an outlier just because I don't have like a ton of um social like not honestly like social interaction. I talk to a lot of people, but like I don't like schedule out events
yeah,
in the evenings. Like it's just my parents think I'm kind of weird. My sisters think I'm kind of weird. But like to me, there's no really. There's not like I'm giving anything up. Like I'm just gonna go home, work on the show, do my design projects, work on
Mhm,
these videos, these designs, this branding, these logos, all these things, and try and you know chase that ball of yarn of creativity.
right,
And it's like I don't know. In the moment, I think it's hard because you don't know what you're missing out on. I think
mhm.
sometimes I think when I'm Matt's age, when I'm an old guy at 38 or 36, whatever he's like, um, am I gonna wish that I was out there, meeting my wife or
Right.
building more relationships and trying to? But I think in the moment you can't really think about that. Like
Mhm.
maybe it's just me trying to avoid the discomfort of wanting to change, but I also kind of think I wouldn't have it any other way. So.
Yeah, man. I don't know. There's no rule book on this stuff. There's no instruction manual.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I guess that was the thing that my mom talked to me about again whenever I was not wanting to go to college was like, I'm just gonna do whatever. Everyone hates their job anyway. Let's just get it over with, basically.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It was that realization that whenever she's like, you know what, do what makes you happy. Like none of this stuff is gonna matter if you aren't doing something that makes you happy. And
Mhm.
it's the most cliche thing that we say, but it's so true.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's crazy. So like today, I work from home. I get to hang out with my wife. We have lunch usually. Um, we go for walks. So like I'm a stay-at-home dad too, essentially. Maybe
Nice.
not like all the way,
Mm.
and I'm okay with that. But like I'm still with my family at any given point. I walk my kids to school. I go to all their baseball games.
Mm.
So like I get to be with my family, and at the same time, I get to just come to my office and have a chat with people on the other side of the country, and
Mhm.
we get stuff done together, and it's cool. I don't know. I enjoy it. It again, you talk about all the different things that are going on. Like, yes, but at the end of the day, I don't know. It's a muscle that when you build that muscle over time of what you are capable of, it's I don't know. It's pretty incredible.
Mm. Yeah, that that's powerful, man. That's for people like me, someone that are young that kind of struggle with that sense of direction. It's kind of nice to hear that you just need to keep grinding, not grinding in like that sense, but just have faith in
Listen,
kind of what you're doing.
right, and that's a word that we're not supposed to say anymore, I guess.
Right.
And I don't know. I always say like I've never stayed up all night doing anything ever. Like I can't. Like at a certain point, my mind doesn't work. I don't know how anybody else does it.
Yeah.
I'm not a procrastinator, never have been. I like to get things done as soon as possible and then focus on making those things better. Um, I don't know. It's it's a word that we're not supposed to use, but it's one that I very much subscribe to. I'm a big sports guy.
Yeah.
That's what makes people great is working harder than most other people would. Now,
Hmm.
I'm not suggesting stay up all night doing whatever.
Hmm.
What I am saying is show up every day, even if it's for 5 minutes. And to me, I consider that to be, grinding.
Mm-hmm.
I also run twice a week for the last 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like exercise, I don't care about my like physical health very much. Like I don't like count my calories. I don't eat a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
but I run because that's just a form of practicing discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it takes in this creative world is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but I think it exists. And I think it's really obvious that that's the thing that pushes us forward. That's what makes us better than others. That's what gets us the job as opposed to someone else.
Yeah, I really love that. That means a lot for me to hear you say that, because as someone from the outside that hears you say, like, you have no, um, you don't owe the past you anything. Like, but you're also someone that keeps his promises to them that they make it to themselves. Like,
Right.
and it's kind of nice to see that you have that balance between discipline and spontaneity, and you're not too locked in on one thing. There's positives and negatives to being locked in on one thing. And I think trying to discern which of them service you and which of them are detrimental to kind of what your goal um, is something that's a lot harder to see while you're in it. And
Right.
like, for example, you can have some of the best habits, but like you said, is your tendency to work out, to count calories, to do all that stuff, is that serving you in your main goal of being a creative and being a business person that leads this team? They're probably not taking you down the same successful path. Like, it's good to have as many good habits as you can, but sometimes, some of them start to bump along each other and then conflict with one another. So I think it's good to see that you have that self-awareness around what your main goal is. So I think I can take away a lot from that. So,
Yeah, that's great.
but one of the more specific questions I wanted to ask you was if you could attribute a lot of your business success to kind of one habit um, throughout your career that you've always had. I know there's journaling, there's the tendency to just want to be a learner, getting up and talking to people, all stuff we've kind of talked about already. But if you could attribute it to one or just kind of a few habits that you think have served you those served you the best throughout your career, what would you
Mhm.
attribute those to?
Yeah, I'll go back to what I was just saying about running. I started running in 2007 when I was in college. Again, it was one of those moments where I was so stressed out. There's family issues happening. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anywhere to go. My family's 3 hours away. I honestly don't know exactly why, but I just put some shoes on, put some shorts on, and I just started running. It was raining. Like I remember it very vividly, where I was like, I needed to exhaust my brain from
Mm-hmm.
thinking about things like it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, physically, I'm just going to run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just started running one day, and much like Forrest Gump, I just just kept
Never
running.
stop.
No, and to me, again, it's not just about like physical like well-being. It was
Yeah.
about yeah, it was mentally. It just helped me with clarity, and I
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things. It also helped with that discipline, understanding what the discipline is of showing up 2, 3 times a week and doing this thing, even when you don't want to do it,
Right.
but you know that you always feel good afterwards, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So it's like it's accepting the pain now for the longer term reward of things.
Yep. That's delayed
And
gratification. Something
right, that's what I was trying
I
to say.
always say. Dude, running's great. The conversations you have yourself before you start. Um I just ran my first half marathon a couple months ago,
Yeah, nice.
and I I had all growing up I'd always told myself, like, I'm not a runner. I'm 6'5". I can't run. I look like my parents called me a baby giraffe. Like, that was how I ran. Um
Nice.
and I learned a lot of lessons just from kind of doing that, and it's super super cool to hear you say that too. Like, a lot of the stuff you're saying just speaks to me a lot. But I know
Yeah, man.
people that kind of, like I kind of said, like, embodying that identity. If you don't see yourself as one thing, then you're not going to take the actions that make any changes. So I think it's cool
Right.
to see someone that like you that doesn't have a fixed and rigid set on who they are, and they're totally open to trying new things and improving themselves like that. So
Yeah.
props, man. Sure.
Thanks.
I know I'm not going to keep you much longer. I know you have only spent an hour, and I've learned a ton from you already through, just following you and kind of being a bug on the wall. But I want to give you, to sign off, like the chance to just talk about your family. Asking guests about, their family is something that I like to do because it's, and you can get like, talk about whatever you want, but
Yeah.
it's a good way to kind of see their eyes light up, and something that you can tell that guests love and enjoy. So
Yeah.
that might be a good transition, but yeah, just talk about your family for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you right now, they're screaming. It's about time for dinner, so I'll
Yeah,
be short here.
go ahead.
Um,
Mm,
but it's always been my priority to just be a good dad, be a good husband. Um, it's not easy to do. I mean, it's harder than running a business to just have a good relationship with everyone in your family. It very much needs attention, just like a business does. I mean, more than a business does, obviously. But like, it's this thing where sometimes you have priorities that shift from day to day, but ultimately at the end of the day, that priority needs to be back with the family. And I don't know. It's been one of my family has been one of my best muses as far as the ideas that I come up with and the stories that I want to tell. And I don't know. Again, it's tough. There's certain things that you go through with a family that you have your high highs and you have your low lows. And I don't know. I like to tell all the stories in between to people. I like to try to find a way to get it into client projects. I like to create short films whenever I can about just different things that have sort of happened in the past. And I don't know. It's fun to have them around.
mhm.
And yeah,
Oh, I think that's a good place to stop. But man, I really appreciate your time today. Like I said,
you
I've
bet.
already learned a ton from you, and I'm gonna let you get to your family here, so I don't want to keep you any longer. But
No,
where
no worries.
can where can people find you if they want to learn about you, Made by Things, and just get in touch?
Yeah, I would say you can follow me on LinkedIn. At Vojacek is the name,
You might want to
and
spell that for people.
yeah, MATT. Last name is Vojacek, V as in Victor, Ojacek. You bet, that's right there. Anyway, guy wearing a hat, that's me.
Mhm.
And then see some of the work that we do at Made by Things at madebythings.com.
Cool, awesome. I really appreciate your time, man, and I'll let you know when the episode's going up, and I hope you like it because it's
Yeah, man.
definitely it's definitely been the highlight of my week, looking
That's
forward to
awesome,
this
man.
and then doing the research and everything. So,
That's cool to hear.
yeah, get out and see your family, man. And I really appreciate your time, man. Have a good
You
night.
bet. All right, I'll see you. Bye.
Yes.